Welcome back. This is Lesson 4 for How to Compose Music 101, brought to you by artofcomposing.com. Today's lesson is a continuation on Lesson 3, Small Musical Form. Specifically in this lesson, you're going to learn about the second small theme type, musical sentences. You're also going to learn how to use melodic repetition to add coherency and variety to your music at the same time. The sentence is similar to a period in terms of size and some of its elements. What it gives us, though, is variation on the way we put together our musical thoughts. So let's take a look at the sentence. The sentence is built, like the period, as two four-bar phrases, called the presentation phrase and the continuation phrase. Unlike the period, the presentation phrase is built from a basic idea and then a repetition of the basic idea. We have several different types of repetition that we can use in order to vary the phrase. These are exact repetition, model sequence, and statement response. The first is just as it sounds. It's an exact copy of the basic idea. Frequently, this exact repetition is varied slightly by a change in texture or dynamics, but most of the time, the melody and the harmony are not changed. Listen to this example of exact repetition that varies slightly with dynamics and texture. The second type of repetition is model sequence. This is done by directly transposing the basic idea into a neighboring harmony. This isn't very common in presentation phrases and happens most of the time in the continuation phrase, so we're going to look at this in just a little bit. The third type of repetition, statement response, is probably the most common, so let's take a look at that. Statement response is the type of repetition that changes the underlying harmony but keeps the same melodic and motivic content. Just like we learned in Lesson 2, you're changing your melody to go with a new harmony. In most cases, this harmony is 5 or dominant, built off of the 5th scale degree. To recap what we learned in Lesson 2, you can transpose each note in your basic idea the same amount of intervals, or you can write your melody with the same rhythm, but starting each chord tone with better voice leading on the nearest chord tone for the new harmony. This is called statement response because it sounds like the first part sets up a statement and the second part responds to that statement. Picture it like this. If you were talking to someone and you wanted to know where a store was, you would say something like, "Hey, where's the store?" The other person would say, "The store is on the corner of 3rd and Main." It's the same thing with statement response repetition. Listen to this example. So let's talk a little bit more about the presentation phrase. The purpose of the presentation phrase is to present the basic idea and establish tonic as the harmony. The presentation phrase establishes tonic harmony by using something called tonic prolongation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about tonic prolongation in the next 2 lessons when we look at functional harmony. For now, I'm just going to tell you what chord progressions to use in your basic ideas and your repetitions. So with the presentation phrase explained, let's move on to the continuation phrase. The continuation phrase has several defining characteristics. There's an acceleration of the harmonic rhythm. This means that the chords change more frequently. To illustrate, look at this example. In the presentation phrase, you have 1 chord for every 2 bars. This is the harmonic rhythm. In the continuation phrase, on the other hand, there is 1 chord per bar. So this is an acceleration of the harmonic rhythm. Another defining characteristic is a melodic technique called fragmentation. This is achieved by taking the individual motives within the basic idea and chopping one out and then repeating that motive more frequently. This usually coincides with an increase of the harmonic rhythm. It's also very typical to see model sequence repetition along with fragmentation. Model sequence transposes an idea into a neighboring harmony. What's interesting about model sequence repetition is that because it's based off of root movements, and not chord functions, it could technically go on indefinitely. This becomes very handy when you want to extend a phrase. Third, you'll find, like the consequent phrase of a period, continuation phrases end with liquidation of the melody. Liquidation is the stripping away of motivic material from a melody. This means that instead of having a melody like this, you'll take away some of the notes so you get a plainer sounding melody, like this. The purpose of liquidation is to help release the tension that has been added by the harmonic acceleration, fragmentation, and the last defining characteristic, cadences. So let's look at the process of composing a sentence. The first step is to compose a basic idea or take a basic idea that you've already composed. This basic idea is no different from any basic idea that you've learned to compose in the first couple lessons. The second step is to have repetition of that basic idea. You can use exact repetition, model sequence, or statement response. Remember, this repetition is tonic prolongation. The third step is to take a motive from your basic idea and fragment it. You can use the same kind of repetition that you can use in the presentation phrase. The fourth step is to start to use liquidation in your melody, leading into the cadence. Well, this covers how to write a sentence. Make sure you print out the worksheets that are below this video. They'll show you step by step exactly how to compose a sentence. In the next lesson, we're going to get back into harmony, and specifically, we're going to talk about functional harmony. As usual, if you found this lesson through a friend or you found it on YouTube and you want to have access to the rest of the course, go to artofcomposing.com and sign up for the newsletter.